All right, just kidding. Oh, hold on.
I hit start.
All right, you guys, we're live now. Apologies, we had a technical difficulty for a moment, but let me know if you guys can hear me, and then we will continue. So let me know if you guys can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yeah, looks like we are live currently.
Yeah, I'm seeing it on mine.
Hey, you guys, so you can hear us, right? Sound check? Awesome. Okay, perfect. Oh, we got someone in the live chat for you, Joseph, saying, my man, Alen. So, so today, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Tina. As you know, I am the eJuices.com social media guru. Today, we have Alen Arjad here as our guest. And we're going to be discussing Coils, which we have titled the show All Wound Up, Coils Unravelled, because, you know, we're punny like that, you guys. But Alan's a coil builder. He knows probably way more than the average Joe about coils. He's actually going to do some cool examples for us on tonight's show. But first, he's going to answer our questions regarding coil building, the process, kind of the difference between the advanced coils that he builds versus the everyday coils that we put in our tanks and everything. So for any of you guys that are interested in having your questions answered by a coil expert, Alen is here for that. And we'll also be running a giveaway at the end of the show, you guys. I have linked it below. So if you guys are interested in winning a $30 gift card to eJuices.com, go ahead and click on that link and enter now, and we will be announcing the winner to that at 7:45. So Alen, thank you so much for being on our show. Thank you for being here, and we would love to hear how you got into vaping and how you kind of became so tech savvy and how you got into this coil building industry.
So I guess getting into vaping, I'll start with that one. So I smoked for a long time, and I think it was like probably 2013 when I got my first vape, and I went around to the corner store because I saw all these people, and I was living in LA at the time, walking around with these cool vapes, and just wanted to give it a whirl. And at the time, I went and the shop hooked me up with an Ego Twist and just one of those little like cardo tanks. So that was effective, you know, and it's so much different than what it is today. But I don't know if it was not effective enough for me, but inevitably I went back and started smoking for a little while. And it wasn't until I think 2015 that I got back into it. And between 2013 and 2015, so much had happened that I got back into it, and I was just pleasantly overwhelmed with everything that was available to me. And at that point, it definitely was working for me. And so I haven't had a cigarette since 2015. And, you know, I just think like all those advancements, they really, it became at that point, the technical aspect of it, or I guess just like the availability of all the different things that were out there became really attractive to me and fun to me. And I think I was at a point in my life where not only was I ready to quit smoking cigarettes, but to get involved with, you know, what I found to be a community, you know. And that's not something I could say for smoking cigarettes. You know, I never walked up on the street and somebody and was like, "Oh, you got that red pack? Like, what's that red pack?"
No, the smokers on the street are like, it's a terrible thing. Never do it while they're smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's like, oh, that's like a very floral aroma, or like never really got that. Which is not to say that doesn't exist, you know what I mean? But it certainly wasn't something that I was exposed to. But with e-cigarettes, it was a completely different story where, you know, there really was that sense of community, and there was a lot of people excited about it and talking about it. So I think, you know, I was at a place where that was really attractive to me. So I just kind of dove into it.
That's awesome. So how did you get into like the art of coil making though? Because that's so specific. Were you always kind of tech savvy and then this came into your life and you wanted to gear kind of your direction towards that? Or were you kind of forced to get tech savvy because of the industry?
Well, I think as far as tech savvy, I mean, tech savvy in relation to vape stuff. Like there was a little bit of a learning curve, you know, like especially getting into building and stuff like that, which it didn't take me long to really want to get into that. And so I did that pretty quickly. But like understanding Ohm's law, understanding like, you know, like the wattages I need to be using, comparisons to the ohms, and all that stuff, which really is not very complicated, but it does take a little bit of work and understanding, okay, I need a certain type of battery, or I need, you know, this type of whatever. But as far as being tech savvy, other than pressing the button on my drill and that little bit of research, there's really not so much technically involved in it, especially when you mentioned the art aspect of it. But, you know, I remember like early 90s, like getting on the internet and stuff. And like, so I think I was at that cusp of like that, being involved with understanding technology and implementing that in my life.
And growing and evolving with technology.
Exactly. But I barely made that cusp of like, it's like, I remember life without the internet. I remember life without cell phones, but I was young enough to be able to get up, be around when it started to be implemented heavily. And so grow up with the internet and computers and all that. So I'd say it just kind of became somewhat natural to me, just being involved in the natural progression of technology, you know.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that you kind of hopped back on and then back off the wagon. Was there like a defining moment where you returned to vaping? And is it because the industry was so evolved that you were like, let me give this another try? Or were you like, let me give this another try, and then you went back and you were like, wow, this is like exploded in the past 2 years?
I'd say definitely the latter, in the sense that it's like, don't get me wrong, like ego twists and that whole kind of cartomizer style tank vaping and stuff is, and there were like, you know, like I remember iGo-W was like the thing at that time. And so like those were effective, but I think, yeah, that explosion and, you know, I guess how effective everything was really attractive to me, and it worked, you know.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I think it's a personal thing too, where it's like maybe I just wasn't ready to give up smoking cigarettes, you know. And now with like the implementation of like nicotine salts and things like that, I mean, I think I think the regular style nicotine vaping is like certainly may take a little while of like getting used to, but for somebody who like now today who's getting into it, you know, it's like getting into nic salts or something like that. It's so similar to like an analog style smoking experience that it's it just works so well. And again, you know, I think that explosion of just the evolution of vaping and everything that was out there was just like enough to. I guess I would say it's a mixture of like the community and like what was happening in the industry, as well as the effectiveness that really got me on it. And I mean, honestly, I don't find cigarettes to be appealing anymore after a certain amount of time. So
yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Makes sense. No, it makes sense. I mean, and I found that like once people kind of get their senses back after they do start vaping, that they are less likely to go back because they can taste again and smell again. And
yeah, what a trip, right?
Yeah. So we've actually got a ton of questions in the live chat already. For those of you guys who are new here, we're here with Alen Arjad, coil builder extraordinaire, who's going to be walking through kind of his coil building process. And Alen, I can let you know what they're saying in the chat. That way, if you just want to like respond, that way you don't have to like look and stuff. But
the homies and a bunch of people.
The homies.
Everybody, I don't have the chance to follow along as much as I'd like to, but I see you all, and what's up?
Our first question is, what's your favorite coil / build to create?
To create? Oh yeah. Man, the kind that I haven't done yet. That's my favorite because it's the challenge for sure. But that's really how it's always been. So it's I really think, I guess, getting into the growth that comes in building, it's like there's really like four main things that four main learning curves that I went through personally, and I see a lot of other people going through personally, and that's like, so the first one is just be like a fuse Clapton, right? You have like two wires, and then you want to wrap like an outer thinner wire around it, and I think a lot of people, there's so many guys out there now that just like bypass all of these like initial learning curves that I went through and just go right into hard stuff. But Fuse Clapton, I mean, just finding like where's the right angle to hold the spool? Are you gonna hold the spool? Personally, I don't hold the spool. I just like have a little jig thing that I put it on. And then there's like staggering where you're like doing spaces in like the fuse wire, and then you're like fusing in the gap. So like staggering. There's like staples where you're stacking ribbon and stuff, and then there's aliens, which is kind of like its own trippy thing where the simple way to put it is like you make a Clapton on something and then you take it off and then you stretch it and then you feed it on more wires. So it's like, anyways, the point I'm trying to get at is that all four of those things was an individual learning curve, and everything other than that seems to be just like a variation of such. So there really aren't very many like original creations, if you will, or like original builds other than the select few. And there's a Helix as well. And I'm sure I'm probably, somebody could correct me and tell me about all these others as well. But really those are like the 4 or 5 that I mainly see. And so everything from that is like a variation or like an addition to, or like incorporating one in the other and kind of expanding on it and all that stuff. So, I mean, the builds that I'm most excited about are the ones that like, it's after doing it for like a year and a half, like there's still things that I haven't done, and I'll get in these ruts where I'm thinking to myself like, man, have I really done everything? And then I'll be like a week or 2, and then I'll see somebody do something like, oh yeah, I haven't done that, but I can't do exactly that. I got to do something a little bit different. And I mean, that's kind of what's exciting about it is like,
you got to throw your own tweak on it a little bit.
Yeah, right. Or maybe do it a little like wider or a little smaller, or just do it, my own little tweak. And I think the cool thing about coil building for me is that like, it's not only a creative outlet, but it's like something that's those little learning curves are very obtainable. You put in the time and you put in the work and all of that, it's something that like I seem to be able to, have this challenge and overcome it. And the satisfaction in that is really fun, but also the process itself is like, it's just, I mean, I can go on days and days as far as like why I enjoy it so much and just getting zoned out in it and all that, but
yeah. No, definitely. That makes sense. So we actually have a couple of good questions from Joseph, and I'm going to go ahead and start with the most recent one that he asked, which is, do you find that it's therapeutic, since you were talking about kind of how you get lost in it?
Yeah, what an awesome question, and absolutely. And there's this concept in psychology called flow, and that, some people may have heard of it, and basically more or less what it is this idea of like getting so consumed in, it's usually like a creative outlet or something that it can even be like work or something like that, where you're so concentrated on one particular activity that literally everything else goes out of your mind.
Yeah.
And when I'm dealing with something really, really small like that, it's like the concentration level.
Yeah.
So I get so tranced out or I get so involved in it that I'm a guy who I need something like that. I've always needed a creative outlet in my life. And when I started building, that was definitely at a time where I was looking for a new creative outlet. And so it fulfills that need for me for sure, but definitely very therapeutic.
That's awesome. And another actually a couple of questions he had, I'm just kind of loop them together because they all kind of seem to be in the same realm. I mean, how many coils would you say that you have built, and how much time would you say you devote to the average coil building process? I know it's all different. I know that there's really complex ones, and then, like you said, there's pretty simple ones. But like, an average of how long it takes you to build a semi-complicated coil, and how many coils do you think you've actually built? I guess those are the 2 questions.
Yeah, right. I thought you were going to ask me how much time I put into it altogether, which I don't know if I'm able to disclose that information, but an average semi-complicated coil, I mean, if I'm able to do it without like messing up it's a smooth process, it can take anywhere between like 2 to 4 hours. But I mean, with that learning curve that I was mentioning, it's like it can sometimes take weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now I'm getting at this place where it's like I'm starting to understand my process. You know, I'm starting to understand what works. And sometimes, you know, in the past, if I try to do one concept or one variation of something rather, like over and over and over again, I'll get really frustrated and just put it down. So now I've kind of gotten to a place where I'll like have like 3 or 4 different things that I'm trying out, and I'll try it for like maybe a couple of days and then let it go, and try it for a couple of days and let it go, and that's kind of my process. But typically, if I'm working on one build and things go smoothly, I'd say between like 2 and 4 hours.
Oh, okay.
And how many coils have I built?
Yes.
Shoot, I'd have to glance at my Instagram, but ones that I've posted, I don't know. That's a really good question. Maybe like 30-ish or something. It's got to be more. Yeah, maybe like closer to 50, I guess. I'm not totally sure, but ones that I built that I haven't been willing to take pictures of or just kind of threw it to the side. I mean, definitely getting in the hundreds for sure. And that's as far as ones that I do like for my Instagram and stuff like that. But if I'm talking about coils that I built for like all purposes or whatever, yeah, that's a much higher number. So.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a lot of time and a lot of dedication to a lot of different coils. And speaking of Instagram, let's pull your Instagram up, you guys, because his Instagram is a pretty magical place. So I have it up here on the screen. And let me go ahead and scroll for you guys. But you can see kind of all the different coils that he's got going on over here. So some of these are like, they look really, really complex. I see people kind of in our office building coils. We've got 1 or 2 guys who are pretty good at it here, but these are really, really cool and really very complex looking. I can see what you mean, how you can probably zone out for hours doing something like this. But here's some of Alan's coils, you guys. What wire do you use, by the way? That was a question earlier on in the chat, and I'm kind of, do you have like a specific wire or like company or brand that you go to for your wires that you prefer, or do you just kind of go with whatever works with the build?
There's a couple of brands out there. The ones that I would probably mention be the most popular would be like Kidney Puncher is one of them. They've been around for a long time, and same thing with Twisted Messes is another one. They both put out really, really great products, super high quality. There's other companies as well that, you know, maybe a little bit cheaper, but, you know, maybe you're not getting the quality that you would get with the other 2 I mentioned, which is Kidney Puncher and Twisted Messes. And like I said, those guys have been around for a long time. Twisted Messes was actually one of the guys who was like kind of the pioneer of the whole build thing. I mean, there were guys before him, but he was definitely the guy who like kind of
spearheaded it, if you will.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. He kind of like took it under his wing and sort of like put out a bunch of tutorial videos and stuff like that. But Kidney Puncher and Twisted Messes puts out some pretty clean wire for sure. And I know Twisted Messes, I think for some of the other stuff he uses Anarchist wire for like some of the larger gauge wires. So
that's awesome. That's so awesome. We had actually, and I'm not even like, they're asking some really good questions in the chat because we had like questions, but you know what? I want to get these are really good questions you guys in the chat are asking right now. One from Patrick, do you have any coils that you build specifically for the purpose of art that aren't necessarily actually meant for vaping? And how many of those do you make versus like how many you actually make for like technical purposes?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think maybe a little bit of a debatable subject, because I think certain people may find in their own experience that, you know, a really complex coil can produce some different effects or some different types of performance. For me, I'd say within like the last 6 months, I've started leaning towards specific builds that I know that I like. So those would just mainly be like aliens or like some relatively simple like staggering stuff. But the stuff that I do for like pictures and the stuff I do for my Instagram account and kind of talking about getting in that creative zone and the 2 to 4 hour process, that's definitely for me personally more for the creative artistic side of it, where I do that. I typically, sometimes I'm really excited about it and I'm like, okay, I gotta know how this is gonna vape. But sometimes I have like a thing of atomizers just loaded up back there that I'm just continually taking pictures of and stuff. So it's like, if I need space, I call it real estate. If I need like coil real estate, and like I'll just like pull it out. But sometimes I'll look at it and be like, that was really cool. It took me a really long time, so I'm gonna try it out. But I guess in short, the coils that most of them that I build now creatively are just to shoot, and then the ones that I make for myself to vape on regularly are mainly aliens or like small staggered variations or something like that.
Very cool. And I think it's pretty cool that we live in a time where you can kind of show off your work on Instagram and social media and stuff. I mean, like, what a time, and how it all comes together. Like, you happen to have, you know, obviously you're passionate about vaping, and then you have an outlet for your creativity. You have a talent for it, and then you've got the world that we live in to market it, or just to put it out there and show people. So that must be really cool that you kind of, not only it's not just like you're doing it for yourself, you can show that off to, like you said, a community of people who really, really appreciate it.
And that is such a big part of it. I mean, honestly, like I've made some friends, some people, and long distance places that some of them I've met in person, some I haven't, but I talk to very regularly. And so I've made a lot of like real cool friends out of this whole situation, and a lot of like-minded people, not only in terms of like personal life, but also like, with, the coil art, which is kind of a platform to get us talking about, our own lives and stuff like that. But I mean, like, there's really so many aspects to it. And there's guys that I see going in the direction of like dedicating the time to the actual building and like experimenting with different styles and stuff. And then there's a lot of guys that spend their time and dedication towards the photography and whatnot. And, I see a lot of guys expanding on the photography aspect too, getting into either product photography or, anything above and beyond landscape stuff or portraits or whatever. But I mean, that's such a draw to me, because it's like, it's not just like getting the stuff out there. It's sort of like sometimes like what's it called? Like friendly creative competition or something like that. But most of the time it's just like sharing the ideas. And that's what's so cool about the building community to me, is that like there really is so much lack of ego and pride. Just like, there's always a couple bad apples in every community, but it's like, I would say literally 95+% of the people in the build community are very welcoming, and they just want to see you succeed, and they're willing to share all their tips, and they just, I think, adamantly want to see another person do what they're unable to do themselves and help them throughout that process, which is not something I see in very many communities,
Even in other art communities, there is that kind of air of competition and ego, but I think that's where the whole vaping thing kind of comes in, and it just works in very like serendipitously, because people really do want to see other people succeed in this industry. So I think that's awesome. I actually want to change gears here in just a minute, but before I do that, I'm going to take this opportunity to just remind everyone who's in the chat, hello, welcome. We had some new people kind of bop in. I am here with Alen Arjad, our coil builder extraordinaire, who's kind of explaining a lot of different things about the coil building process, the kind of coils he's built, what they've been for, and kind of the difference between these coils and the everyday coils that we use in our vapes. Be sure to check out our giveaway, you guys. We have one. I've linked it below the video. We will be choosing a winner around 7:40, 7:45-ish. So if you want a $30 gift card to eJuices.com, then go ahead and click on that and enter now. So Alen, I wanna eventually come back to the building and kind of the intricacies of and the art of it. But there's a lot of people who watch the show who maybe aren't as familiar with the complexities of the, you know, the expert coils, if you will, the kind of advanced coils. So, you know, I'm sure that you know a lot about your average coil too. So for kind of the benefit of our viewers, would you describe in simplistic terms what a coil's role is in a vape device and why coils, like different coils, don't work with just any vape?
Well, so how do coils work is basically it's a heating element. It's, you know, you have to have something that's going to heat up to burn off the vapor, and then there's cotton that goes around that, which is basically your wick for the liquid. And I mean, more or less, if that's the way that you're going to look at it, then all coils are the same. They, or at least serve the same purpose, right? Which is to do that, is to heat up the liquid and to produce vapor. Where some coils will apply and will not apply is, you know, there's tanks, and then there's RDAs, right? So a lot of people find it suitable for themselves to just get a type of tank that has pre-built coils, walk into a shop or order them online through you guys, say, and just install it in their device. And it's a fairly simple process of just kind of priming it up, as I call it, and, you know, kind of plug and play. Screw the old one, put the new one in, prime it up, and then fill up your tank and you go. And then there's the other side of it, which is RDAs, which are rebuildable atomizers, rebuildable tripping atomizers, or RBAs. I've heard rebuildable building something. Anyways,
RDAs, TAs, BAs.
Yeah, there's lots of different A's.
Yeah.
But so that's where you're going to get into a little bit more of like, you know, creating your own coils. And there's a lot of people too, like I know I repped like Clean Builds. They're a site that you can go and get pre-made coils for your RDAs. There's another guy, Jupster Builds. He's starting to do it, and a whole bunch of different places. I think, and Kidney Puncher as well sells pre-made coils. But you know, that's, you know, some people would would argue that the performance is going to start differing from tanks to RDAs and whatnot. But I can tell you for sure, as far as, I think your question was something along the lines of like what coils are going to work in one scenario or the other, is the pre-built coils are not going to be able to go into your RDA. But there are also like RTAs, and they're like rebuildable tanks and stuff, so you can kind of cross over. And I've even seen some of them now that you can do both. It comes with like a little deck you can screw in that you can either build on yourself, or you can go and buy pre-made coils. So if you're choosing, you know, and yeah.
No, definitely. And by the way, guys in the chat, I am going to go ahead and comment underneath the video and add all of the handles and links to Clean Builds and a couple of the people and the companies and organizations that he just mentioned. So if you guys are interested in checking those out, it's going to be in the comments below the video. So that's awesome, dude. I love hearing that. I love hearing that you've got, you know, these teams of people that there was a question in the chat regarding teams, and you don't have to tell us, it's fine if you don't want to play favorites. Do you have a favorite building team that you build with?
Well, I mean, favorite building team, Build Mode is an amazing collective of guys. One of the bigger building teams that I was first aware of was called the Coil Collective. And the team that I'm very lucky and happy to be a part of is called Massive Builds.
Oh yeah, I've seen that name pop up like 8 times in the chat so far.
Yeah, it's nice. I think some of my Massive friends are hanging out too. So what's up, Massive folks?
Guys.
And yeah, I mean the team thing is just, it's super fun, and it's, you know, we're talking a little bit about not only community, but like getting involved in personally with other people. And I just think it's just such a cool way to do that, and just really get tighter with a bunch of people, and you know, a little bit more intimate discussion, and what's going on in the community and stuff like that. So
That's awesome. I see it, and I love that there's even teams for that. Like, I think that's probably why it's so different even in itself in the creative space, because you're literally on a team of people. Yeah. That's cool. I love the vaping community. I love that there's a creative outlet for it. Now I heard you mention Ohm's law earlier. So for our viewers, can you give us a quick breakdown of like what Ohm's and Ohm's law, what those are and what role they play in coils?
Well, I guess like on the very basic level is you're going to look at the resistance of your coil, right? So resistance of your coil, if you're looking at like a regulated mod, you're going to have the ability to adjust your wattage, right? So to put it simple, the higher your resistance is, the lower your wattage is going to be, and vice versa. So like, yeah, if it was like a 0.5 build, you'd be putting your wattage, I don't know, just kind of ballpark because it's been a while, but like maybe like 30, 40, 50 watts, something like that. As opposed if you had something that is a lower resistance, like, 0.2 or 0.15 or something like that, you're going to be putting a lot more wattage, getting closer to the hundreds, sometimes even more. And I think the other thing to be very cognizant of is your batteries. That's such an important aspect, especially if you're getting into mechanical devices. And, mechanical devices seem to perform really well when you have a lower resistance. So especially devices that are like a single battery, really understanding your battery. And so the battery aspect of it is going to be two different parts, which is you're going to have your milliamp hours, which is a number that basically determines like the lifetime of an individual cycle in a battery. So like how much life are you going to get from the start to the end of its use, which is generally between like 4.2 is where it starts fresh, and then like 3.6 or 3.5. You don't really want to go below like 3.5 to be safe. I think you can go a little bit lower, but let's play it safe, people. Let's not take any chances. So
yes, let's.
and then the other part of it, which is extremely important, which is the amperage. So I think they measure it in two different ways: pulses, like so pulse amperage, and then like continuous. I think it's called continuous amperage, and that's the one that we look at much more commonly in vaping. Whereas, like a good battery, as far as if you're trying to use like a low resistance coil or something like that, a really good battery is going to be like around like 23 amps or something like that.
Yeah.
What that means is the lower your resistance goes, the more amperage it's going to want to pull out of that battery. So if you have a build that's like expecting to pull out 25 amps and you have a battery that's rated at 18 amps, coils are very unforgiving, and mechanical devices are unforgiving in the sense that you have a battery that's rated at 18 amps and you have a set of coils that's going to want to draw 25, 30 amps from it. It's not going to have any problem. All right, let me rephrase that. It's going to pull that 25, 30 amps. Whatever it's going to want to draw is what it's going to take from that battery, whether or not it's rated to do so as such. So that's where you see a lot of people starting to get in trouble. You start getting really hot mods and people that make silly decisions, to say the least. And
safety issues, maybe.
Yeah. So if that kind of stuff is unfamiliar, I would definitely say a little bit of research. The guy that I would definitely shout out, who is the godfather of batteries, is Mooch.
Oh, yes, Mooch.
Yeah, Mooch. He would be an awesome guy to have on the show. He's just seems to be a great dude.
Yeah, we'd love to have him. He's so busy all the time because he is the godfather of batteries.
He really is, yeah. So if you want to get, a little education on some batteries, I would just suggest Google searching Mooch batteries. He's really good about putting out like updated lists of these are the batteries I would suggest, and it has what's really cool about it is that like not only are the batteries that he suggests, it has the rating of the actual battery that's put out from the producer, as well as the rating that he gets himself, because that's what he does is he tests all these batteries and he says, okay, yeah, these guys marketed their battery to be like a 40 amp battery, which, by the way, if you see that, that's not really like a thing. So like if you see anything around like 30 and below, like I would say you're safe. But so yeah, you know, he has these charts that's like, yeah, they say 40, but really it's like an 18 amp battery. And so that's where you're starting to get into like very sketchy territory.
That is sketchy. That's like half of what they're saying it is, even less than that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that is sketchy.
So
we have really diverged from like the simple single wire to higher ohm coils to coils that are just so much more complex. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on how and why we're at this point when it comes to coils, wires, all these different things that are out there. Do you think it's because the industry boomed and then suddenly there was a niche for it, or?
One of the things I'm thinking of is like the difference between like high resistance coils and low resistance coils. You know, there's definitely a school of people who would say that higher resistance coil is something between like 0.5 and even like 1 ohm is with really low wattage. It's like, I'm going to get some massive flavor out of that. And they're chasing flavor rather than vapor production and whatnot. But that's not to say that if you go on the other side of that, where you have a really low resistance and really high wattage and a lot of power, that necessarily reduces flavor, but it's the performance is much more effective, I think, in terms of, and just really for me personally, overall performance. So I would say, and I'd say that definitely plays a really big part in the growth in the effectiveness of vaping, because I looking back and thinking about it now, really is a lot of those products that were available in 2013 when I started vaping were not suited towards the low resistance, as it's considered sub-ohm vaping.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of people in the industry recognize this, that the fact that the performance was much more desirable in that range. So they started building the products around it and whatnot. And I think started getting a little bit more savvy with understanding their batteries, understanding the builds and stuff. So they kind of worked with it to build it to a point that it was going to be cool for the public to use it, you know.
And now we've got all these different ones because of that ability. Yeah. Would you say, I mean, is there like a number in your mind? I mean, rough estimate of how many types of coils, different types of coils there are currently available? And if there are, I mean, and what are some of the most popular ones? Because I'm hearing, you know, I've heard Alien, Clapton, Fusion, all that thrown around.
I would say as far as like types that are available.
Yeah.
Well, okay, two sides of it. How many are available in general? Some would argue that 4, right? And that was going back to that number of like the 4 or 5. Those are the only original ones. Everything else is just a variation and whatever. So that's kind of the side that I lean towards. But as far as like what's available generally for public purchase, that would, I don't know, probably like 8 or 10 or something like that, because there are variations of the ones I mentioned, like a Staggerton is a really popular one. Just the general like staggered builds, and then the Aliens, the Fuse Claptons, Staples, and I feel like I'm missing out on one, but those I think tend to be the most popular, and I think also there's room for adjustment with those too. So it's like if you want a certain type of build, if you want like to say like an Alien build, or if you want a staggered build, it's like it doesn't have to be just one way. There are ways to alter it to the point where, okay, I can put more wraps on it and get more resistance, or I can use different gauges of wire to really hone in on what the requested resistance is. So you can get a staggered build and it can be 0.15, or you can get a staggered build that's like, you know, 0.3 or 0.4 or something. And those are all available to you. But as far as like actual styles that are more common to public sale is, I'd say probably about like 8 or so.
Okay. 8. Yeah. Okay. And do you feel that like the abundance, like this many coils are necessary, even the variations and stuff that are out there? I mean, do they contribute to a different experience? Are there is there a huge number of differences, and besides, you know, the resistance and stuff and how they hold flavor, do we really need that many, I guess is my question.
So I mentioned like 8, right? So I would say, yeah, within those like 8 or so, you're going to find some differences. And there, some people claim that there are, huge differences. To me, I think it's more like, just the finer differences, and that like, if you're talking about like a wider build or something, you have a lot of surface area that's generally going to put out a little bit more vapor production. If you have something that has like round wire cores, people are going to argue that like maybe that's better for wicking retention and whatnot. And then there's ones that it's like I can't even explain. Like the good old Alien, it's like I've seen people try to explain like this is why it's good, this is why it works, but it's just, to me, it's just a damn good vape.
Yeah.
And other ones as well. There are the small intricacies about it that are different. And just be like somebody who's trying out like a craft food, or like, okay, going out to like a barbecue event or something, and they're like, here's pulled pork, but there's 8 types of pulled pork. There are going to be some people that go up to each 8 plate and they're going to say, this just tastes like pulled pork. And then there's going to be the guys that go up to it and go like, oh no, I'm tasting like the subtle differences.
Yeah, this one's honey, this one's smoky, this one's...
Right. Yeah, this one's more zesty.
Yeah.
So to me personally, it can be a subtle thing. But I'd say the one thing that the one main difference that these types of coils contribute is overall performance, for sure. And that's not to say you can't get good performance off of a round wire build, but if you're sticking to those few that I mentioned, there definitely are advantages. And but then you get to a certain point, for me in my personal experience, where just because something's more intricate doesn't mean that it's going to have better performance or whatever.
So my question is, as far as the coils that you build, like the advanced ones, would you say that a majority of them are more for like the artistic expression, or that they're for literal use, or do you just kind of build them based on the need at that moment?
That's interesting you say that's the need part of it, but yeah, today, these times, the coils I'm building now is definitely more for the creative, artistic aspect of it, and then you can get into I really like to geek out on like different angles and stuff that like I can take pictures from, as well as like finding like cool colors. And there's different alloys like Canthol and nichrome and stainless steel that you're going to get different types of colors from. Some are more vivid, some are more like pastel, versus ones that get like seem to be really heavily saturated. So those are generally the ones that definitely the ones I spend the most time on, for sure. But when I'm thinking of just like building my own vapes or my own atomizers, I tend to lean towards the select few. So
it's funny, you can tell how passionate you are about it. You're like, I'm geeking out, like I'm doing, and it's so funny because you can like hear it in your voice that you really, really genuinely enjoy it. I mean, that's probably why you're doing what you do. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, there's so many people in the community that really are very competitive about, or I wouldn't say necessarily competitive, but really strive to like go above and beyond, be the best, and to like grow in terms of like exposure and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, man, it's like, yeah, if I didn't like what I was doing, I would stop. But the fact is that I just really enjoy the process. It brings me that what was the word that the other guy used? Just like that therapeutic sort of state and all that. So yeah, I really
the flow.
Flow, definitely.
Yeah. We have actually a really good question from Joseph. Can you elaborate on the subculture that is coil building versus the overarching vaping community at large?
Elaborate on the subculture that is coil building as opposed to the vaping.
The vape, yeah. Would you say that the coil building community has its own kind of quirks that veer off in different directions from kind of the generalized vaping community? And kind of what are those quirks and that subculture that maybe the average vapor doesn't know about if they're not in the coil scene, for instance?
Well, I mean, I guess I can only like speak off of like my personal experience in that the coil building community is the vape community that I dove into the most. But I mean, as far as like, I mentioned this idea of like it's basically like friendliness, you know. It's like people are just really friggin' nice, you know. People were came with like open arms and just welcomed me and taught me what, you know, they had learned over time. And I mean, honestly, like even like some of the bigger guys, like if you message some like the bigger coil builders, they will respond to you and talk to you and be friendly with you, which like, you know, so it makes it very obtainable to be able to establish those relationships and get in with it. And I mean, I guess like maybe one of the quirks would be the just like the creative aspect of it. I think, and that can, I think, definitely be said for like, you know, the modder community, people that are doing like the high end stab wood stuff.
The hobbyists, right?
The hobbyists, right. So I think that could be a quirk from it. But, you know, the friendliness thing, that one really stands out to me, the creative aspect of it where, you know, like I said, I've seen a lot of people that, I mean, really, what happened for me and what I see happening for a lot of other people is like getting into the photography aspect of it, you know? Yeah. So it's like, I'm, you know, getting involved with like teams and getting involved with like, you know, different niches in the coil building community. Like a lot of people talk about like cameras, you know, it's like I'll get added to what is in general terms, like a vaping group chat. And it's like, people are talking about camera gear and like, oh, I'm using this camera and like, I'm like talk the difference between like crop sensor cameras and full frame sensors and like macro lenses and wide angle lenses. And it's just so like, it's, I don't know if that's available in other vaping communities. I'm sure it is to a certain extent. But, you know, also a lot of guys that are getting into that photography, getting into the products photography stuff, which there's a lot of guys that basically spend the time and dedication that I talk about in coil building just to product photography. And so those, I think, are merged in their own way. Trying to think, man, different quirks in coil building community. I mean, those are the two that tend to stand out to me right now. But I know the second that we stop this live stream, 1,000 more are going to come to me.
So we had two pretty good questions in the chat that I'd like to cover before I'd like to kind of take it in another different direction again. So the first question was, I know that earlier in the show we went over kind of what your favorite build was, which is pretty much anything you haven't done. Have you ever done a build that you don't like? Have you had like a least favorite, you know, like, oh man, this is really terrible and I don't want to be doing this, but I have to sort of thing?
Right. Yeah, there are a few. I'd say like, so like a Suka build, like TSUKA, that's basically more or less like an alien build, but instead of using like a thin round wire build, you're going to use like ribbon. So there's different techniques of how to like achieve the final results. But nonetheless, I mean, I guess it's subjective in the sense of like, I'm sure there'd be a bunch of people who'd be like, oh dude, Suka builds are my thing, you know? But
yeah, Joseph in the chat was asking about Suka coils earlier and if they help bring out the taste better versus the alien coils.
Yeah. So I think for me personally, I find that like builds that have like ribbon claptoning, so like the ribbon outer wire, I get a lot of spit back off of that. So it's really just gonna like get a lot of juice in my mouth and stuff, and I really I mean, this can be altered by doing different alloys, but I've also found like that, like the ramp up time can be a bit of a bummer, especially if you're on like a single battery 18650 device, or even like a dual parallel device where, you know, it's just like you're sitting there holding your button and then like 3 seconds later, maybe not that drastic, but you know, a little while longer, you're taking your drag, as opposed to some builds that you'll press the button.
Like it's right there. Yeah.
So yeah, ramp up time can be a little bit of a bummer on that, as well as, like I said, the spit back. I generally personally don't get much flavor off of it. And I think kind of the same thing can be said for like a Mohawk Alien 2, which is kind of like another alien variation. I generally get the same sort of results where it's a lot of spit back and just minimal vapor production, minimal flavor. And then, you know, talking about ramp up and stuff too, like the staples, like sometimes, like I said, you can always tweak it enough to like kind of like get more desirable results of the same type of build. But a lot of staple coils that I've built and I've vaped on, generally have a really long ramp up time. So what that means is not only am I sitting there like holding down the button a while to get my vapor, which like can be worth it, but the thing that makes it not as worth it to me is the fact that it's like, okay, I'm personally not willing to carry around a bunch of batteries with me all day.
Yeah.
So like the ramp up definitely contributes to like, you know, just draining your batteries a lot and hot mods and whatnot. But you know, it's not to say that like it can't get like a reasonable vape off of it. I just think that for me, there are other bills that I think will get me either what I want or really close to what I want without those kind of downfalls to it. So
that's awesome. I have another question for you from one of your biggest fans in this chat, Jameson, who's had plenty of questions regarding the flavor of your drink and what your favorite sushi is. But I'm gonna go ahead. It's the orange one, right?
It's the tangerine. Yeah,
it's the tangerine one, you guys. The whole the beginning of the chat at the beginning of this, people were like, "What LaCroix is he drinking?"
Yeah, shout out to LaCroix, sparkling water.
So Jameson's question was, since you learned this trade, have you made coils for anything other than vaping?
Coils for, I've seen people make like earrings out of them and stuff like that. I'm sure
that's so cool. Oh my God, I didn't even know you could do that's right, all right, you and me, we're gonna have a chat when this live show goes down about the earrings.
Yeah. Pitchfork variation earrings. That's like one thing I can't really think of like different so personally, no, I haven't done any application outside of like RDAs or vaping or anything like that. But I guess another thing that comes to mind is that there are a couple guys, I wish I could remember his name right now, but there's one guy who was really into building, and what he got into was like wire wrapping. And so like that's another thing that I don't know if that's like, you know, like the official niche name for it, but like wire wrapping and wire art, where like people are wrapping stones with like copper or brass or things like that. And it's kind of an equally sort of creative process where I don't think they're using a drill or anything like that, but what they will do is, you know, kind of do it a lot by hand and kind of, so almost kind of like weaving. And I mean, I don't know much about it, but I know that there's got to be techniques that are like, you know, similar to building, where it's like, yeah, certain techniques are going to yield you certain results. And then, you know, so that's really cool and interesting too, because I've definitely looked at some of those pictures and been like, how do you do that? And I realized that they're not using a drill, so it's got to be some sort of weaving, which just is mind blowing, because it's like I'm thinking of all these things, and there's another guy, dude named Harry, H. Hasselback, shout out to Harry, that he's brought up this idea that like what's holding back the building community from like coming up with new things, and really it's the drill. You know, so as far as applications outside of, you know, coils and stuff like that,
it's the tools, you'd say.
What's that?
The tools, then you'd say.
Yeah.
That's what's
limiting. Yeah. That's what I would say is limiting. You know, and then application of, you know, like I mentioned the photography thing a bunch of times. It's like that's become a huge part of it, and that is the area where I can find myself applying what I do in coil building outside of the vaping in general, you know, so.
No, definitely makes sense. And I think that as time goes on, like, look at how quickly everything just in the industry itself boomed, that eventually you guys will probably be able to get your hands on those tools, that you'll have more options to be able to build things. But for the time being, it sounds like you guys are pretty set, and it looks like you guys are pretty set with what you have as far as making magnificent things. So.
Oh yeah, there's lots of room to grow too.
Yes. And that's awesome that you're up for the challenge, that you're one of those people who it's like, you know, like you don't want to stop until you, you know, kind of challenge yourself into doing something that you haven't done before.
And I really just enjoy like the fact that like a lot of the challenges that I put myself up to are obtainable. You know, there's definitely lots of things in my life where I've tried to set expectations to a certain level, and I'm like, that just for me, at least at this point in my life, it ain't working out. But like coil building, it's like, have an idea, and sometimes it can happen within like a couple hours, sometimes it can happen within a couple weeks, you know, so it's like I'm usually able to get over those like learning curves, and that just keeps happening, and that's what's attractive to me. So.
And I'm sure it helps to motivate you when you can get over that learning curve as quickly as you do versus maybe some other things in other industries where the learning curve is a lot harder. I mean, I don't know how I'd have problems building coils because I'm not that dexterous, so it would take me a long time as far as that learning curve. But that actually leads me into a couple of questions. Well, I guess there are two questions that could be one from Alex in the chat. Is there an end game for coil builders? I mean, do you guys want to get picked up from some big company and build proprietary coils, he asked? It sounds like up until this point when we've been talking, it's been a lot about the creative process. But is there a goal in mind with that? Or do you want to just kind of continue challenging yourself in the creative sphere?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the idea of like photography being a huge thing, and I've, as I mentioned before too, I've always had a need for a creative outlet. I was kind of always into like visual art when I was growing up, and then got really into music at one point, and then this just happens to be, I think, the very first thing, or the very latest thing that I'm into. And what I find myself wanting to do when I get home or when I have a chance to do it. But the one thing I've always said is that whenever the time comes that I do, lose the drive or motivation to do it, the one thing I'll take away from coil building is the ability to understand how to use my camera. And so that will be applicable outside of that. And
that's a great point. Your photography skills can be used anywhere.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think this focuses a lot on, no pun intended, this focuses a lot on like macro style photography. But nonetheless, I think like, for the most part, all the settings on the camera are the same. You're talking about your shutter speed, you're talking about your ISO, you're talking about your f-stop. That kind of stuff, and that is applicable not just in a light box in a macro shot, but all over. So yeah, the one thing I'll walk away with is I think the understanding of how to at least get my hands on a DSLR camera, but also that is something I see kind of naturally happening for myself too, where I'm starting to get outside a little bit more, starting to shoot outside, and starting to and seeing a lot of other guys that I talk to, and I like my team, Massive Builds. A lot of those guys are getting into not just the product stuff, but also just general like landscape photography and stuff like that too. So that seems to be very attractive to me too. And the creative pursuit, I think, will always be there. And in the times in my life when it hasn't been fulfilled, seems to be the less satisfying portions of my life. So the creative pursuit continues.
That's awesome. And the photography skill, I didn't even think about that. That translates into so many other areas. And like I said earlier, in 2018, like that is an extremely valuable skill. Just being able to make something look, there's obviously so much more of an art to it, but even just making something look presentable on like Instagram is a huge skill nowadays. So,
yeah. Instagram is terrible with compression.
Oh yeah.
All this time on like an image and stuff like that, and I load it up, and I'm like, wow, what did you do?
They compressed the hell out of it, is what they did.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I'm going to take this opportunity to reiterate for some of the viewers who are new, or if you guys bopped in after I mentioned it, we are here. The segment is called All Wound Up, Vape Coils Unraveled, and we are here with Vape Coil Builder Extraordinaire, Alen Arjad, as our guest. Who has answered some pretty amazing questions about your average everyday coils that go in your tank, the kind of more advanced coils that he works on building, the community of coil builders in general, which not a lot of people are probably familiar with, because it's kind of like a community within a community. So we've gotten some really, really good answers today, guys. I would like to reiterate that we have a giveaway. We will be selecting the winner in roughly 35-40 minutes, and that winner will be receiving a $30 gift card to eJuices.com, and I will also be linking that giveaway in the chat. So if you guys haven't already, joined and you want a shot at getting that $30 gift card, then go ahead and visit that link and you will be entered to win. And just one more thing, I also happen to link underneath the video if you guys are interested. We just unrolled a brand ambassador program roughly about a month ago. So if you guys are interested in becoming a social media brand ambassador for eJuices.com, I have also provided the link to the application form below, and I will mention it before the show ends today. So Alen, back into it. I mean, how do you decide on all the different coil sizes and shapes? Do they come from like a place of inspiration and you're just like, oh, I think that this would be really cool, like you said, making your own personal tweaks on it? Or are they more geared towards, you know, tactical uses? Does it fulfill a need in a market? Or again, it's like kind of that balance that I feel is kind of becoming a theme, which is creative versus you know, like use in functionality.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely, there's a spark of inspiration wherever that comes from. I mean, less and less these days for me. I think of something like that I haven't seen. Usually just more these days I'll see something that like I haven't done, or something that's maybe like an extra step in the build that I've done before, that like is a slight tweak or variation of it. And you know, so I'll think to myself like, yeah, I want to do that, and again maybe add a tweak to it or something like that. But yeah, I think that it's not so much that I see stuff these days and I want to like just do an exact duplicate of it, but sometimes that happens too. Like there's a particular build that it's, again, I hear that it's not a great vape, but like a Razorback Alien, which is like sort of like where you take ribbon and you're instead of like clapping it on like what would be intuitive as like the flat side of it, you're actually like clapping it on the edge and then like taking it off and stretching it and all this crazy stuff. So in that sense, like, yeah, I'd want to like duplicate it or whatever, but the inspiration, I mean, yeah, it really just, another great part of the community is that a lot of people put out really cool stuff. And so I'll want to add my own variation to it or tweak it, or especially if it's something that I haven't put much time into, you know, that's generally where the motivation comes from. And yeah.
Very cool. And we have actually, I'm quite curious about this. Great question, Alex. A lot of these coils have some really, really good textures, right? So do you find textures and patterns like outside of vaping and you pull your motivation from those textures and patterns? Or is it kind of like you said, where you see something and you're like, I want to do that, but I want to make it better with my own spin?
Yeah, no, I mean, I wish I could say that. Like, I've seen textures outside of coil building that I've tried to somehow put up in the coil. Although that doesn't bring to mind like braiding. That's one thing I've never personally gotten into. But there's guys out there that like they do crazy braids where it's like, I mean, you know, that was one thing I thought about. I was like, what's the cool texture that like I haven't really seen? And I'm thinking of like woven things. But yeah, braids is like there's a huge niche for people that are into like braiding wires and stuff. And I'm actually, as of late, a little bit motivated to try some of that stuff out. And that's where I think you maybe see some more variation in textures and things like that. But yeah, shapes coming from nature, not, I wish I could do that a little bit more. But one thing I do want to mention that you kind of, from the last question that kind of slipped my mind, but I'm now remembering, is like, you mentioned this idea of like building a coil with the intention of mind of like performance as opposed to creativity. And that's one thing, like, I mean, I wish I could say that like I did that personally, but I know of some guys that like, that is the way they look at coil building. It's like when they're thinking about a build, they're thinking solely about functionality and not only like in making a coil to vape on like that day or the next day or something, but like trying to develop something that like is like, you know, just ups the game in performance and stuff like that. So that's out there too. And that's, yeah, to me personally, that's super inspiring, you know?
So you'd say that your target market, so I'd say their target market is people who are kind of looking for the next tech jump, if you will, versus I would say, would you say that your target market is more for the creative aspect of it then? Just for the people that that are regularly seeing your products.
Yeah, I would say so. Just more for that creative aspect and the more aesthetically pleasing and stuff like that. And I mentioned kind of like geeking out on it and stuff. And it's like it's like I even like at some point got into it to where there are certain like builds where like the angles of like the fusing wire, like there'll be like a couple of like core wires that have some spacing on it, and so you want to like fill those gaps, and it's like to have them like perfectly level and to perfectly straight and whatnot, all those little like intricacies. It's like when I started noticing that kind of stuff, and I think I can speak for others too, when other people start noticing that kind of stuff, it's like it's really like to somebody who's never seen it before, and like you're like, oh, check out this picture on Instagram.
Yeah.
About the cool coil, but then somebody who like maybe has done it for a little while, or somebody who's just like a fan of coil building, like look at it and be like, damn, like that is impressive, because like
they know the work that goes into it because they're in that space too.
Yeah, and there's like certain builds that like like Staggerton builds and like pitchfork kind of builds where it's like that there's another learning curve for myself there, where it's like I'm still trying to like get those angles straight, and it's like I've spent 2-3 hours trying to like work on a build or something, and I'm looking at it like and looking under my magnifying glass, and like this is okay, and I get it under the camera and I'm like, nope, it's not happening, and like that's 2 or 3 hours that I do not consider wasted, but 2 or 3 hours that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get the results that I was looking for, So,
it's a learning lesson of 3 hours.
An opportunity to grow.
Yes. See, I love that. It's not time wasted. It's an opportunity to grow. Yeah. So I would actually love to hear, what is the average market price for these specialty coils?
That's a really good question. I'd say like around like $10 you can get like a good set of coils, like a starting point. You could probably find some people that are going to be giving you some coils for maybe a little bit cheaper, maybe like $8. I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's going to give you a good set of coils for $5, unless you're like buying them in bulk or something. But then again, the more complicated they become, and not necessarily just the more complicated they become, but like the more time that is required to achieve that particular build, the more the price goes up too. So I mean, I've seen them like, $10 is you can definitely grab a good set of coils for 10, maybe more on average, like 15 and then you can definitely start getting up into like the $20, $25 range, just depending on what you're willing to throw down for. And if you are one of those people who's like, I really do enjoy like those little those aspects of this particular build or whatever. But man, I've even heard people that like they'll hit up somebody on Instagram and be like, I'm gonna pay you like $50-$60 to like have you build me this particular set. And it's like, man, it's almost heartbreaking, because it's like I want to say like, dude, like that's I don't know if you're gonna get like the experience that you're expecting from that. But again, it's all subjective, It's like, who knows? It's like the brain and the mind is a very trippy thing. And who knows, for maybe somebody, like the aesthetic aspect of it does make it taste better to them.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's all subjective, So
yeah. No, that makes sense. No, that makes total sense. Like somebody who's like, oh yeah, like I want this super, super awesome, I heard this and that, and then you get it and it's like, maybe it actually performs not as well because it is more of like a custom thing than, your average one. But, we've actually got a couple of people in the chat. We've got Alex and Ralph asking if you could actually do a quickie build demo. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I'll do something. I mean, just trying to think what would take a sufficient amount of time or a good amount of time.
Something, quickie, like anything you can do in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we'll be able to complete it in 5 minutes, but I'll definitely show like the process.
That'd be awesome. Coil building process, you guys. You're getting from an expert here. You guys are getting something that you're not going to see in a lot of other places. So
I'll and also another thing too is I do live streams every so often. I used to do them a little bit more in the past, but if you want to come and say what's up on my Instagram, it's AlenArjad. I do live streams periodically. If you want to even DM me and request a live stream, maybe I'll take some time and do a little bit more of that. But let me move my camera over and see if I can't get to a comfortable building position here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys, like Alen said, if you guys are interested in looking at his Instagram, or you guys are interested in watching his live streams, if you want to see more of this coil building process, there's his handle. I don't know if you guys can see it in his name above, but it's at AlenArjad. And I showed the Instagram before, you guys, but while he's getting all set up, I'm going to go ahead and show you again. There's his handle. So if you guys are interested in adding Alen on Instagram and following him and seeing those live streams, get at it, you guys.
That's funny. I just looked briefly and someone was like, step 1, buy a drill. Yes, this is very true. This is true. Well, that being said, the things that go into coil building, most commonly definitely be a drill. And that's, you can get a drill for like $20 at a hardware store if you really wanted to. Then another crucial thing is, would be fishing swivels. So these you can find at, I get mine online, but you can just go to a local fishing store or whatever. And so the idea with this is that one end of the core wires or your build is going to go in your drill, and the other end is going to go on the swivel. And so what that means is that's going to rotate freely. And so I'll just do a quick fuse Clapton, or at least show you the process for it. So I have some 26 gauge Canthal here. So 26 gauge was a good gauge for me to start with. And so what I'm going to do is I generally think about, okay, what am I trying to do here? And so I will think about the length, and maybe I want to do 4 inches per stick. And so 4 inches is about what's going to give me a single coil. So if I want to get 4 inches, I give myself a little bit of leeway. I want 2 cores, so I'm going to say 2 10-inch pieces. So I'm going to pull one 20-inch length, and I'll straighten it, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I just take my measuring tape and measure about 20 inches off of that. And of course, got to get my handy dandy snippers. These things are crucial. And actually, investing in a good set of clippers has served me very well. It's pretty common for, in the past, clippers to have wire cutters to break on me. So, okay, now I have a 20-inch piece of 26 gauge, and as you can see, it's naturally kind of wanting to bend on me just based off of living on the spool, being spooled up as such. I'm going to take a regular pair of pliers, needle nose pliers, and I'm going to take the very end of it and clamp down on the end. I'm going to pull a little bit of tension on the drill and just spin it for maybe just a couple seconds. So I'm going to take my fingers, run it down the length, just kind of pinch the end. And what you can see that's done is it's made it completely, totally, perfectly straight, which makes it 1,000 times easier to work with. So I'm going to clip off a little end here. And for this particular build, what I've come to do, just a fuse Clapton, is instead of pinching or clipping this in half and actually dealing with the 2 separate cores, I just take it and I bend it in half. So what I'm going to do is just kind of find the ends, and then I'm just going to kind of find where the middle is there. I got my swivel attached onto this little block here. See if I can get a better shot. It's pretty janky, don't judge, but it's basically a vise that's attached to my computer, and then I have another one of those little vices that is kind of holding it down. Adjust myself back up here. And all right, come on, focus. There we go. So I'm going to take the swivel that's attached to this little block in my vise. I'm going to attach the cores, this 26 gauge that I have, and I'm going to attach it to that. And then I'm going to take the end here, and I'm just going to clip down on it, give it a little bend. And so what that's going to do for me is just basically give it something to clamp down on in the chuck of the drill. So I'm going to open up my chuck of the drill a little bit, kind of get it in there, work, and then clamp down the chuck on the drill. Okay, so now what I have is this 26 gauge that is chilling in one end of the chuck of my drill, and then on the other side of that, I have it on my swivels. So as you can see, when I am going to spin it, it's just spin it freely. So if you were to have it just attached to something stationary, it would just twist up, right? Yeah. Sometimes that's what you want. In this particular case, no, I want it to spin freely. So what I'm going to do is, and I guess I'll reveal one of my little tricks here that I sort of found worked for myself pretty early on. Is I have my my Claptoning wire here, and so this is 36 gauge. Again, the cores are 26, and I have 36 for Claptoning, and I think those for me were really good gauges to start with. So one thing that you can do is, and I see a lot of people doing, is literally just taking the spool and just holding the spool when they Clapton it. So you would attach the just the little end of the lead here to those little L's that I made earlier sticking up out of the chuck of the drill. Kind of gives the Claptoning wire something to wrap around. So I'll wrap it around, and then I'll just show, like, kind of briefly. You know, someone would just hold the spool. I don't know if you can go a little bit back, but basically I'm just holding the spool and I'm going to start clapping it on. And so this is where fuse Claptons and just fusing in general, like, I think is a great skill to learn, because what you're immediately going to notice is, like, well, what angle do I hold this at? If I hold it a little bit too far to the left, then there's going to be space. If I hold it a little bit too far to the right, it's going to be overlapping on itself. So kind of like, and learning how to keep your hand steady to the motion or the speed of your drill. So, you know, I'll just hold down the trigger here. And my drill is on a slow setting right now. So it's Claptoning it, it's doing the job that I want, but for the sake of putting out this little little reveal of the thing that I found works really well is I'll go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and just clip off this spool here. And what I found to be really helpful for me is I've made these janky little blocks, which is, I guess I just call it like a little jig. And so what this is just like a regular little block. And I put this little screw here to prop the spool down on. Trying to hold this so it doesn't unspool. Sometimes if I let go, it'll just completely unravel on me. And then at the end here, I have this little like fish eye sort of hook, and I put some tape around it. That way, I'm not damaging the wire as it's feeding through. So what I do is I take this thing and I set it aside. You probably won't be able to see it on the angle that I have the camera set up at. I'm going to feed the lead through that little hole there. And so what I do is I wrap the, in the same way we did before, I wrap the lead around this, the little L sticking out here. And the way I hold my wire is just like this. You probably can't see it on the camera because it's very thin wire. But basically, it's kind of like throwing up the horns and putting up the wire in between your fingers. And so what that does for me is I feel like personally it gives me a lot more control over the feel and the tension that I'm putting on the wire. When I'm holding the spool, I can still gauge the amount of tension that I have when I'm holding the spool. But for me, it just feels a little bit more controllable, a little bit more manageable to be able to actually hold the wire itself. So I put my drill on high now. I'm not going to take too long to get through this. I'm not sure exactly how long it'll take, but I'll start to clap in a little bit here.
Super intricate process.
That was about enough for one coil right there. I don't want to bore you with the process of a fused Clapton, but that's just like a real basic, you know, for me, it was a learning curve to get over because while I was doing that, I wasn't really thinking about it too heavily, but I definitely was focusing on the, like the angle in which I was holding it. And, you know, like I kind of just learned over time that like what angle works for me, which tends to be not exactly a 90-degree angle. Sometimes that's what I want to do if I'm going to like fuse something. But if I want to like just get just a fuse Clapton, sometimes I'll even get it, the angle going back to a low point where it almost seems like it would overlap on itself. And that seems to get like really tight Claptoning. But so for the sake of just kind of wrapping up this little brief demonstration here, one thing that tends to happen is, I wish I had my macro lens next to me, but this little piece right here has gotten like kind of twisted up. So another thing to do would be to just go ahead and take whatever the excess wire is chilling in this chuck here and the drill, and kind of taking the stick, placing it down on the stick that we just made, taking the chuck and squeezing it down on the stick. And I'm going to set my drill back on slow setting. And then another tool that I find extremely useful, in fact, mandatory, is to have a set of nylon pliers. And so this is going to allow you to kind of clamp down on the build, where if you're doing certain types of builds that you need to clamp down periodically as you're building, these are going to be the guys. If you use regular style needle nose pliers or just regular pliers, it's going to damage the cores, and it's going to damage the Clapton wire to the point that, you know, if you're trying to take pictures of it, it just doesn't necessarily look too aesthetically pleasing. So take my nylon pliers here. I'm going to reverse my drill, pull down on the end, just for the sake of trying to straighten this thing out. And I usually go maybe about like a half turn over in the opposite direction, kind of feel it out a little bit, and I'm trying to get this stick so it's not completely and totally twisted up, which I seem to do pretty well. There's a bit of this end that's a little bit ugly. I'd probably clip it off just because, you know, hey, we're talking about clean builds here. Let's get real. Here we are. We're left with this stick. You do that twice and coil it up, and there you go. As far as the coiling process that I do, I won't go completely over it because for me, I do spend a little time trying to make sure that it's somewhat perfect. But I use the Coil Master jig, and there is another piece that goes on the top here if you're trying to do like macro builds or whatever. So that would slide on the top, but I actually just keep this aside, and I just use this kind of as a handle. One thing that's really cool about this particular jig is, I don't know if you can see it, but there's little slots in there. So I know in the earlier models, there were just like holes that you could put it through, which are not wide enough to kind of suit the types of builds that a lot more like the advanced style builds are. So it has these little slots, which are like really helpful. I just take the stick, throw the little slot in, through the stick in the little side compartment there, and hold it down with my thumb, and that gives me a really good grip on it. I take my pliers, and then I just continue to or start to coil it up, and that's about it. So coiling itself is definitely another process as far as you know, how you'd like to do it. If something's like a little bit wider, the angle at which you hold the stick to start wrapping it tends to be a little bit greater. If it's something just like this build that we just made here, this fused Clapton, then you can generally tend to have the angle closer to like a right angle or like a 90-degree angle. So that's how you do a fuse Clapton, and then from there, it's just like I was saying before, sort of developing whatever sort of variation or overcoming some of those learning curves that I was talking about. Another quick shout out to LaCroix.
The tangerine.
Go ahead and move my camera back here, and that's a little coil tutorial there.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for that, Alen. That was intense. I was not expecting it to be that intense.
Yeah, and sometimes it gets loud too. I feel bad for my neighbors. I have a drill that's, I think it's like 3,000 RPMs, which is pretty fast, and it's a cheap, really fast drill, and it is so loud. And I apologize to my neighbors on the other side of this window at 2 in the morning. So.
No, I mean, but still, I mean, what a process. Like I think that that's awesome that you kind of like MacGyvered your own workstation and stuff. That's so cool. Yeah, we have it's funny that you keep holding up LaCroix. Our, another person that we work with, Michael, he's been in a couple of live shows with us. He drinks that stuff like all day long. So that was awesome. That was amazing. Thank you so much again for showing guys in the chat. This is not something that you see all the time, these kind of examples. So it was really great that you could show us kind of like a little glimpse into the coil making process.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, again, if anybody wants any, I'm more than happy to share whatever experience or, whatever it is that I've had invested into this, any tips or tricks or whatever. Feel more than happy to, or more than welcome to DM me on Instagram, and I'd be more than happy to get back to you and share that. And yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to take this opportunity before we continue, because we've got maybe like 15, 20 minutes left in the show, you guys. So I just wanted to let you know that we have a giveaway. I will be drawing the winner at 7:45-ish, so roughly 15 minutes. If you guys haven't entered, it is a $30 gift card to eJuices.com. So go ahead and enter now, because I will be drawing those winners at 7:45. I know some of you guys came in a little bit late while he was actually building the coil and showing us the process, but for those of you who came in a little bit later during the show, we have Alen Arjad with us, the coil building extraordinaire, who has agreed to show us, first of all, what that fuse Clapton, kind of like what that looks like when you're building it. He's answered a lot of our questions regarding specialty coils, the coils that are in everyday tanks, the differences, the actual community of coil builders. We've learned so much in this segment so far. So thank you, Alen. And guys, be sure to check out that giveaway link. I've also linked the brand ambassador program below, and I'll be going over that at the end of this show. So Alen, can you actually rebuild a pre-made coil? And I would like to clarify that I am not in any way encouraging this. eJuices.com is in no way encouraging this. We do not recommend anyone does this. It's purely just for informational purposes. So I have to put that out there, you guys.
Sure, yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point. And I think something to be very cognizant of is to really be safe when you're doing these things, and not just rebuilding a pre-built coil that wasn't originally intended to be rebuilt, but any of these builds I show you, even something like a fuse Clapton, make sure that you have the right batteries for it, make sure you have a device that's suitable for it, make sure that if you don't know these things, that you at the very least just ask somebody about it. I know that when I was learning about it, just a quick glance on YouTube, or a quick search rather, maybe spending about like an hour or two was enough to get me started, and then over time continuing to learn about it. But yeah, please guys, let's vape safe. And on that topic of building pre-built coils or rebuilding pre-built coils, the first thing that comes to mind is like, a lot of the closed system devices are really popular right now. I've seen it done. Something like, a particular closed device system, I can't say I've seen most of them attempted to be rebuilt, especially something that's like, so that'd be like one aspect of it, the closed systems. The other aspect would be like an average pre-built coil for like a tank, where it's just basically, I don't think I have one to grab right now, but just a little cylindrical kind of coil. It's like a coil head, I guess you could call it, and it has like the cylindrical metal outside of it, and then it has the wick, and then the coil that's on the inside of it. Honestly, I don't know what's the average that a coil head goes for now. It's like what, like I think $4 is like pricey for it, maybe, or maybe it's around $4. Let's just say it's $4. In my personal opinion, the amount of time that goes into it to rebuild it, if you are trying to be financially savvy and trying to save a penny, the amount of time that goes into it, the amount of work and the amount of MacGyver skills, for lack of better words, it's not worth it to me to try to do that as opposed to just going out and buying another one. If you are really interested in trying to build or whatever, then yeah, I mentioned that there are tanks available. There's a company called the Wake Mod who put out a device, the Wake RTA, and they actually, I know that one of them, they have the ability to buy either pre-made coil heads for it or a little deck that comes in it that you can experiment with too. So that might be something that's, cool to check out.
Awesome. And thanks for going over, the safety as far as that too, because again, we just want to reiterate, not encouraging it, just wanted to ask the question. So, and speaking of eJuices.com, a lot of your old buddies wanted to say hi. So Kristen, Jameson, Brian, and Alex all wanted to say hello. They're in the chat right now, so I just wanted to make sure. And Brian says he hopes everything's going well for you. So
yeah, you guys have been also kind to me and great to me in the past. So many hellos to you guys back there in Las Vegas, and many thanks for all the great times.
Awesome. And many thanks to you in the chat who are also complimenting me. I don't know. I'm not the expert coil builder, but thank you guys for the compliment. Alen, how would any upcoming kind of regulations and stuff in the vaping community affect you? And if they do affect you, are you prepared for any of those imminent regulations?
Well, when I think about that particular question, I think of people that are into coil building for making pre-built coils to sell, for RDAs and such. And in that sense, like, yes, there would be some preparation involved with that. I for a short period of time was trying to do that myself, but I personally have a tendency to try to want to create money off of hobbies that are mine, which at some point sort of drains the passion in it. And this has been one hobby that I've caught myself doing that, and so kind of put that aside. But I purchased a business license for myself here in California, and then you kind of have to get into these areas where, in California in particular, they're taxing tobacco so heavily, and not to mention these FDA regulations that are coming down. It's like, really kind of making it very difficult to put out products in the way that it was a little bit easier in the past. So am I prepared for it? I guess, like, with the business, the pre-made coils for sale thing put aside, I think the way that it could affect me is maybe accessibility to wire and whatnot. And I've heard, I forget what state it was, but someone was mentioning the other day that it's like a dry county, but for vape stuff, for tobacco products, And so it's like, you go on to order wire or a vape product on a website. They say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't ship to you." And so it's like those kind of things, those are very real. That's where, the whole advocacy or standing up for the vape community, fighting for the vape community, messaging your congressman, making sure that your voice is heard, all that kind of stuff is important. But as far as, considering I've talked a lot about like my attachment to it or my motivation behind coil building is more the creative aspect of it.
Definitely.
I think, as long as there's still access to wire and stuff like that, that it won't be too much of an issue. But as far as for people that are doing pre-made coils, or for people that are just the everyday average Joe vapor, they, if they don't have access to their gear because for whatever reason, then that can definitely be a huge problem. It is a huge reality. We hear a lot about people or places rather that are banning flavors, you know what I mean? And all these kind of wacky, odd end things that it's like, initially when I heard those things being proposed, it's like, that was never going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
But they did, you know? So what's, you know, seems to potentially be the unthinkable and the unimaginable, those things are happening. And, you know, for me personally, on the topic of advocacy, you know, it really comes down to like a personal level. Whenever I see somebody that's, you know, talking about devices being unsafe and somebody's like, whoa, is that thing going to blow up on you? It's like, you know, kind of a little bit of education as far as like, well, you know, those things happen so rarely. And when they do happen, it is, I mean, I don't want to be a downer, but 99% of the time that stuff happens. 99+% of the time, it's user error. It's very, very uncommon for something to come out of the factory and to be faulty in that sense that it's really going to cause the kind of dramatic damage that we've seen in stories and all these crazy, you know, accounts for, you know, unsafe vaping. Which isn't to say that it's never happened because of factory error, but I will say like 99+% of the time, it's not because of that. It's because of people that, you know, don't take that little bit of time to get into the batteries and discovering what vaping safe means, which we talked a little bit about earlier, so I won't go back into it. But keep vaping safe. Keep, you know, just keep doing it the way that makes you safe, and keep speaking about vaping and your positive experiences that has happened for you, and the health benefits that you felt from it personally, and all that kind of stuff. And we will digress from seeing these kind of negative impacts in the vaping community that we have seen as far as flavor bans and banning tobacco sales in certain areas and massive tax hikes and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my little tidbit, my little rant on that. So,
yeah, no, definitely. I think that it's really unfortunate when you do have those instances where something is so much of a rarity, but it's used as the weapon against an industry or something like this, you know, and it's like, everything's dangerous. Technically, everything has an ability to do something. It's like, so no, you're right. I definitely would say as long as people are safe and they're aware of what they're doing and they do the research and they take the time to actually understand what's going on, I think a lot of that can be avoided. So
there's lots of devices that are out there that make it very easy to, if you don't want to put the time into, you know, maybe learning a little bit more about it, or getting into making complex coils, or buying high-end mods or anything like that. And the cool thing is you can go to a vape shop, spend like $30-$40, probably even less, and like get a device that works really efficiently and fulfills your needs. But another thing you mentioned that I'll just a brief on real quick is you talked about like these isolated events being used as ammunition against the community as a whole.
Yep.
And you know what, that is just so true, you know, that it just takes one little mishap like that to really build a lot of drama and a lot of attention around, you know, the unfortunate things that can happen if you're not vaping safely and whatnot. So it's even more reason to put in the time and invest a little bit into understanding what it is that you're vaping, especially if you have a desire to get into the more complex technical things that are available out there too. So
definitely, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and say one more time, guys, 2 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pick the giveaway winner. So if you haven't entered, go ahead, click that link below. I'll also post it in the chat, but click the link below the video, enter, and then you guys will have a chance to win a $30 gift card to eJuices.com. So Alen, before we, you know, draw the giveaway winner, just a quick question. You mentioned, you know, how amazing the community of coil building really is and how friendly everyone is. Do you have any other coil builders that you really admire that you want to give a shout out right now to? Like somebody that you look at their work and you're like, wow, like, yeah, that's amazing.
You mentioned 2 minutes. That's a pretty brief amount of time to mention. I really admire. But again, huge shout out to the build team that are a part of massive builds. All the guys not only are really great builders and really great photographers, but genuinely really cool people. So a lot of those guys, Dirty Coils, Matthias Builds, Harold Hasselback, Godless Brand, Space Coils, and so many more build labs on that team. Cloud So Dense, Crazy Vape Man, so many of those guys. Man, if I'm forgetting one of you, I am so sorry. Joe the Builder, what an awesome guy. You know, I know Wesley Coils was on that team, is on that team. And there's a massive build-off going on right now. So if you want to be a part of the massive build-off, I think it may have ended today. So I got to hop in the chat pretty soon and see how that goes. But other guys that are just really inspiring to me when I got into it and continue to be a huge inspiration, I would definitely say Nesquibel, Nesquibel. Off-World is another huge inspiration. Photography is amazing. Addicted to Building, just again, great photography. Greg Stevens, a guy who's really paved the way. Some OG guys like Twisted Messes, Kent, awesome motivation, and so grateful for guys like that to have paved the way in the build community. Squid Dude, Beefy Billows is an awesome guy. Tommy Wire Guy is an awesome guy. Awesome build nerds who got into great photography stuff. I want to again shout out to some of the guys that so cool to be a part of this massive builds team, because a lot of those guys were huge inspirations to me initially too. Again, like Harold Hasselback, hugely inspirational. Godless Grams, hugely inspirational. Dirty Coils, Matthias Builds, Space Coils, just such awesome, just not only builds, but again, the photography. Space Coils is a crazy dude. Go check out him. One word, Space Coils. He does some, like, you're talking about unique shapes and textures and things like that. That's your guy. Man, so many more. Let's see. Samir Builds. There's some new guys too. Well, first, Kyle Jones is a very intense builder. If you're talking about guys that are dedicated to just building, and there's some new guys that are coming on the scene, like Pretty Boy Builds, Skinnies. Man, I could just go on and on and on, but I will spare you. But you know, give me a DM and I'll point you in the right direction as far as guys that inspire me personally. And you know, it's some of these guys that I mentioned maybe aren't active in the way that they used to be, but have really paved the way and have really inspired a lot of people, including myself. And there's just like I said, like a new school of builders who are kind of continuing along that road. One more guy I'll mention is Blue Eyed Goon. He's the guy who's he's the guy who actually made the Alien, and he made a really cool post the other day, kind of just talking about the build community as a whole. So if you're kind of interested in that whole aspect, go check that out. And then he mentioned a couple guys in there that were inspirational to him. One of them's called Deed Up Dex. That guy, talk about old school builders. He's really like just round wire builds that are just super intricate. And another guy that I was first aware of, a very OG builder, Crush Coils. I think Crush with a K, and I think there's maybe an underscore in there, but I will spare you the rest. I apologize to anybody who did not mention.
No apologies needed.
I love all you guys in the build community. Thank you for giving me a community to be a part of. Lots of great friendships and many more chill sessions and awesome opportunities to come hang out at ECC, and we'll meet and chat and get to know each other and continue to build cool relationships. So
awesome, Alen. Thank you so much. And no, Alex, I'm probably not going to list all of them, but if Alen wants to comment with some of those handles, he most definitely can if you guys are interested in checking out some of these other builders. I don't even think I'd be able to go through it.
Cool. I will take some time to do it.
And tag them. But I mean, if you do want to tag anyone, or if you would like us to add all these handles somewhere, let me know, and I definitely will, so that everyone can do that. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, I'm just going to go ahead and select the giveaway winner.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
Shout out to, again, Massive Builds, who does mass mods, just came out with an awesome squonk. Trinity glass tanks, Vape amp that does all the rig stuff, Native Wicks for amazing cotton, District 5, Met 4 for some great juice, and of course Squid Dude. All these guys, thank you so much for the support. And back to you. Yeah, thank you for that.
Oh no, absolutely. So you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and draw the giveaway winner. Drum roll. Austin J, you are our winner. Austin J, congratulations, Austin. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and email me at eJuicescom@gmail.com, and I'll make sure that you get that gift card ASAP. So, Austin J, you are the winner. Go ahead and email us at eJuicescom@gmail.com. I'm going to go ahead. Close that. Congratulations, Austin. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys Alan's Instagram one more time. So there's his handle. If you guys want to go ahead and add him, follow him. He actually mentioned a couple of those people that he just mentioned in the video are also mentioned in his bio. So if you want to look at some of those, feel free to as well, you guys. So Alan, now that we are kind of coming to a close on the show, is there anything else that you would like people to know about the coil building process? Kind of like where that industry is going, any other shout outs that you want to do, or any other pages you'd like people to follow that you think would be really cool builds? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, where the coil building community is going, I'm not totally sure. Sometimes I'm skeptical as to the growth of it. I know that when I got into it, I've kind of, my perspective on it now is like maybe like around a year and a half, 2 years ago, like seemed to have kind of like maybe plateaued, and maybe it's kind of like stuck around that plateau for a while. Some people might say it's declining or whatever, but honestly, I think there's a lot of room for growth. I mentioned a couple guys that are newer and they're just coming out and just super intense builders, you know, it's like things that I never would have thought to accomplish, and, you know, they're just coming right out of the ballpark and doing it. What was the other part of that? So I guess repost page, Clean Builds. They're an awesome repost page. Clean Builds is great. There's like Vaperoxy, and Vapex does some amazing product photography and stuff too. And as far as like Coil Porn, PRN, Coil Porn is an awesome one. Yes, there's some great repost pages out there if you kind of want to get like variation and not necessarily just like follow individual builders and whatnot. You can also get pre-made coils from Clean Builds and Kidney Puncher, as I mentioned. Final thoughts are I'm going to be hanging out at ECC, and I'm going to be at a buddy's booth. I believe they're called Black Line Juice. It's a new juice that he's doing. So I'm going to be doing some builds there. I think the idea is just to have a bunch of wire laying around. If you want your Addy belts, just come say what's up. Again, I think it's Black Line eJuices. So come say what's up. We'll chat, we'll hang out, and I'll be more than happy to show you some more tips and tricks. Again, shout out again to my massive family, Massive Builds. Just came out with that awesome massive mass mod Squonk. And Trinity glass tanks for amazing hardware, cool glass caps and stuff. Vape amp, who does rig stuff. Native Wicks for some amazing cotton. Met 4, who they are part of, or Savior does all the Met 4 stuff, and they have this new deep fried cream cake that is like seriously my all day vape. I like, no joke, not just like promoting it because I want to. I promote it because I absolutely want to. I adamantly love that juice. Check out that deep fried cream cake from Met 4. They also have a chocolate milk that's really good, and kind of like a strawberry milk. And then again, shout out to the Squid Dude team coming out with new cool builds and stuff like that. Thank you guys so much for the support and the fellowship and all the good times. May there be many more to come.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alan. You guys in the chat, thank you so much for asking all the amazing questions that you did, for being supportive and awesome. And by the way, you guys, I know I mentioned it earlier, so I'm just going to say it real quick. We have a brand ambassador program. So if you guys want to make social media posts for us and engage with us and help build our brand and the future of our brand in turn for products and eJuice and rewards, then definitely click on the link below and apply to that. And Alen, thank you so much because you gave us so many details about so many things. And like I've been saying consistently throughout the show, I had no idea what goes into an advanced coil building technique. I didn't even know that the community was kind of its own sub-community, if you will, within the vaping community. So awesome details, awesome demonstration. Thank you so, so much for giving us the knowledge and for being so personable. And you definitely have to come visit us here in Las Vegas. Kristen, Brian, me, Alex, Jameson, everyone, we want to see you. So make it down over here whenever you can.
Thank you very much for inviting me on the show. It was super fun to talk about what I am so pumped on all the time, and I'm so happy to be able to share whatever it is that I have to share. Again, if you want to DM me and say what's up, and I'm more than happy to share whatever info you're curious about in regards to the coil building community.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Add Alen on Instagram. There's his handle right there. And have a good night. We'll be back on same time next week, 6 p.m. Pacific time, Tuesday night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.